Hello again. I'm Jim Raymond with the Colorado State Recovery Task Force. In Colorado, the State Recovery Task Force is state departments and agencies that try to help communities move recovery actions forward as quickly as possible after a disaster. Considering our recent state of wildland fires in Colorado, one of the most important recovery concerns after a wildland fire is increased risk of flooding that can threaten homes and communities. Even if a home wasn't directly impacted by the wildland fire, it can be impacted by increased flooding and mud flows. Here to speak to us about the risk of flood after fire and important actions that individuals can take to protect their homes and other assets is Doug Mahan. Doug is the state NFIP coordinator with the Colorado Water Conservation Board. Doug, welcome and thanks for your time today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Doug, let's first start with discussing how wildland fires can alter flood risk in an area or for a community, and how long does this risk last?
Certainly, wildfires can dramatically alter the landscape. It removes vegetation, which would normally absorb moisture and water, and it leaves the ground charred and barren and not able to absorb water. Under these conditions, flash flooding is a very high risk, not only for structures that were identified in the floodplain prior to, but structures that are outside of the currently regulated floodplain.
Does it have to be a lot of rain to increase the flood risk?
No, not a lot of rain at all. All that rain, wherever it falls, accumulates, flows down, and can cause significant damage.
So what you're saying is that after a fire has altered the terrain, then the water flows differently than it did immediately before the fire?
That's correct. It flows on top of the surface of the ground rather than being absorbed.
So if flooding creates a higher risk for homes after a wildland fire, what are some ways that individuals and businesses and even communities can protect themselves financially after a wildland fire?
There are several ways that they can protect themselves. One is to be proactive and know what the risk is and know that the risk has increased. Another way is to have a plan in case a flood event does occur. And probably the best way to protect yourself from financial loss is to have flood insurance.
Is that through the National Flood Insurance Program?
It can be. There is private flood insurance, but the most affordable is typically through the National Flood Insurance Program.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the National Flood Insurance Program is?
The National Flood Insurance Program is a federal program. It's a voluntary program for communities, including those in Colorado. It was established in the late 60s and early 70s to address two primary reasons. One is to ensure that communities adopt and enforce adequate floodplain development management regulations, and the second is to offer affordable flood insurance to residents.
Do all communities participate in the National Flood Insurance Program?
Not all communities participate, but the majority in Colorado do. Those that do participate, it opens up flood insurance to all of their residents, not just the ones with structures in the identified floodplain.
How can you find out if your community participates in the program?
You can call the Colorado Water Conservation Board and myself. You can contact your local community. They have a floodplain administrator.
So flood insurance is something that you sign up with through your insurance agent?
Correct. There are NFIP-backed insurance policies. There's also private insurance policies that are available.
Okay, so you contact your insurance company and they will help sign you up for the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's administered by FEMA.
That's correct. Private insurance agents write the policies, but it is administered as a program through the Federal Emergency Management Administration.
So Doug, I've had a number of questions come into our office with the State Recovery Task Force on whether flood insurance is active right away. And what I understand is that nationally there is a 30-day waiting period for flood insurance before it goes into effect. But I understand that in Colorado, if a homeowner or if a fire meets certain criteria, that exception might be waived. Is that true?
That's true. Typically there is a 30-day waiting period for any insurance to go into effect once it's purchased. In the case of flooding after fire, there is an exception that might be available to some of the residents. The flooding has to originate on federal land that has been impacted by a wildfire, and also the flood insurance must be purchased within 60 days of the containment date of the wildfire itself. The actual exception is not established until a claim is filed. So the exception does not take effect when the resident purchases the insurance, but rather when a claim is filed. And again, the exception is not always guaranteed.
Okay, well that's really good news for Coloradans who didn't know that they were impacted by a flood until all of a sudden there's a fire. And there's been a number of wildland fires in Colorado where this has actually occurred. So they would contact their insurance agent and ask for that exception if that tragedy existed where they needed one.
Yes, the insurance agent would be the best source of information. They have the knowledge and the experience in the community to offer the best information.
So Doug, we've said for a long time now that insurance is always the most effective tool for recovery under any circumstances for any disaster that happens to your business or your home in Colorado. And flood insurance, as well as other types of insurance, are very important aspects for that. But you have to specifically sign up for flood insurance. So in other words, just because you have homeowners insurance, that doesn't mean that you have flood insurance.
That's correct. Most homeowner insurance and renter's insurance will not cover a flood to a structure. Flood insurance is very specific and it's a separate policy. Flooding is one of the most expensive disasters that occurs in our country. 1 inch of flood water in a house can cause up to $25,000 worth of damage. The average payout for a claim in 2018 was over $45,000.
Okay, that's really good information. So it's extremely important for our emergency managers and community officials to know and communicate how important it is to get flood insurance. Even if you haven't had a fire, if you think you're at risk for flooding generally, it's really important to have flood insurance if you have any possibility of flooding for your home.
Absolutely, and that's what the CWCB does. We partner with other state agencies, with the communities, and with the insurance agents to make sure that they have the information and the tools that they can pass on and make good decisions about.
What other actions does the Colorado Water Conservation Board take to help protect Coloradans from flooding in Colorado?
The CWCB is very active in protecting Colorado from floodwaters. We are very active in watershed protection, and the watersheds offer a very natural way to protect communities, property, and life from floodwaters. We work closely with FEMA, with the National Flood Insurance Program. We partner with communities, we partner with residents, and we are always there to answer their questions.
Okay, well that's really good. Where can people find out more information, first about flood insurance and then about how they can contact the Colorado Water Conservation Board and more about what you do?
There are several resources that are available to Colorado residents. To find out about the National Flood Insurance Program, the website floodsmart.gov is an excellent source. There's also the disaster assistance telephone line for FEMA. Their number is 1-800-427-4661. Again, that's the disaster assistance for the NFIP program. Also, the CWCB can be a direct line for any of our residents. And our telephone number is 303-866-3441.
And I'm assuming the CWCB has a website that goes along with that?
We certainly do.
Okay, that's great. We'll make sure we link to that. So the FEMA disaster number that you talked about, that's specific to if you're flooded, you can call that and FEMA will help you with the National Flood Insurance Program?
Not just if you're flooded, but if you have any questions about the National Flood Insurance Program.
Okay, so it is specific to flood insurance.
Correct.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for your time today. I really want to thank you for all the work that everybody in the Colorado Water Conservation Board is doing behind the scenes to help Coloradans, particularly with flooding issues and especially after a wildland fire.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to the conversation today. I hope this helps you, help your communities keep safe after a wildland fire, specifically around flooding. I want to thank all the emergency managers for all the work that they're doing in Colorado to keep their communities safe. You can find additional recovery videos by searching CO Emergency in Colorado for additional recovery topics and recovery videos. Thank you all and be well.